So I've been playing the Cat Lady. You know, I've bought quite a lot of Steam games in my day. Not compared to some people, but when you look at the amount of games I actually played compared to what I own, the difference can be a bit jarring. So, I figured that it was about time I'd slowly make my way through my Steam library. And to start off, I figured that it would be fun to play one of the most depressingly awesome games that I know of. I am, of course, referring to Sonic Adventure, The Cat Lady. The Cat Lady is a game made by Rem, as he prefers to be called, is a Polishman residing in England. So one could say that he has a very firm grasp on melancholy. And holy shit, does it show. His first game, that I know of anyway, is a game called Downfall, which is about well, I could explain, but just look at these screenshots. Those should speak for themselves. Anyway, I always feel kinda weird reviewing games made by small groups of people, as it really feels like I'm talking about something someone made instead of just another product from some faceless company. And as a person who also makes some things, I know how much it can suck to be on the receiving end of critique, especially if you're an insecure little bitch like me. But yeah, I still felt it necessary to review because god damn it, it's my show and I fucking wanted to, Mom! Now, the story of the Cat Lady is quite the peculiar one. Well, as far as video games go anyway. As it indeed stars a cat lady. No macho men with big guns, only outgrown by the size of their big raging man penis. And no slutty bimbos or cartoony anthropomorphic pixel bollocks either. No, instead you play as Susan Ashworth. Susan is a chronically depressed, middle-aged woman with somewhat misanthropic views, so basically me by the time I'm 40. She has no friends whatsoever, and all she has are her cats, and even those aren't really hers. So she decides the logical course of action would be to kill herself. However, instead of fading away into nothingness, she instead ends up in some kind of weird autumnal dreamland. There, she encounters the Queen of Maggots, who grants her the gift of immortality and tells her to kill a total of 5 psychopaths, aptly dubbed parasites. And so, Susan Ashworth sets off on a morbid adventure, leading to copious amounts of blood, gore, disturbing imagery, and also cats. Meow. Now, something about the voice acting that kinda rubbed me the wrong way was the varying recording qualities between the game's many characters. And while I understand that that's likely due to the actors just being people willing to help, there still is some very unfortunate peaking even with the characters that have good audio quality. Which, you know, it happens to the best of us, and by that I mean that it even happens to me sometimes. But it can be a bit immersion breaking when you first hear it. Although, considering that the game is fully voiced, it's easily forgivable. I can't even begin to comprehend the effort that must have gone into making a game on your own and having to convince people to record a shit ton of lines for free. And also, the atmosphere and artwork are pretty fucking amazing as well. The lighting, the backgrounds, the dialogue and music all match each other perfectly, and it makes for an incredibly immersive experience. It's a very dark game overall, and depressing in the best way possible, which is quite a rare thing for a game to do, especially when you consider the genre that it sits in. That genre being a point-and-click adventure game. The controls and interface are very simple to use as it's limited to just the arrow keys and enter. And the puzzles are your usual inventory bullocks you tend to see in other adventure games like Monkey Island and Grim Fandango. So you pick shit up and use it elsewhere and often end up guessing the solution to a puzzle rather than actually figuring shit out. Which can be a bit tedious when you're repeating the same few steps over and over, hearing the same dialogue play out over and over as well, just in order to try something different. Although, to be fair, it's not so much the game's fault, as it's more or less just a flaw of adventure games in general. I don't really mind all that much, honestly, but I can definitely see it being an annoyance for those with less patience. Anyway, while the dialogue is actually written exceptionally well, the dialogue trees themselves can be a bit iffy sometimes. What I mean is that the way the questions are asked sometimes makes it very unclear whether or not they're addressed at Susan or at the player in a shattered memories kind of way. Thing is as well is that if these questions were aimed directly at Susan, then the player wouldn't really be able to answer these as they don't know what she's thinking or what happened to her in the past. But the psychiatrist, for instance, still asks a great number of these kinds of questions. So it really makes it seem like they're trying to do both instead of focusing on just one. Like, with some of these questions, I felt like I had to answer them as I would have done myself, but then sometimes I felt like I had to say what Susan would have said despite not really knowing what exactly that would be. And while this doesn't happen during every conversation, it kind of felt to me like those dialogue trees were just there for the sake of it, even though those particular conversations may have been better without them. I don't know, it just could have been handled a bit better, I guess, as now it just made me feel like I was half-assing these answers even though I didn't have much of a choice. The places where the dialogue trees do make sense are handled well enough though, and while it does kind of feel like your input doesn't really matter all that much as far as the story's development goes, I did feel like I had the answers at my disposal to at least give me the feeling that I did what I would have done. I mean, there's something very frustrating about having to take responsibility for your actions while your actions were greatly limited. Looking at some of the Telltale games, for instance, I often found myself having to answer a question even though all the answers in question seemed very unreasonable to me. And while I get that that may very well have been done on purpose, I still find that seeing everyone acting unreasonable on their own accord while I have to carry the responsibility is just a wee bit annoying. And while I get that that may very well have been done on purpose, I still find that seeing everyone acting unreasonable on their own accord while I have to carry the responsibility is just a wee bit annoying. And this game doesn't do any of that, as all the answers in certain arguments all varied greatly. So the hot-headed voice raisers get all the room to piss about as much as they want, and those of the calm and collected variety also have the ability to give answers that seem as reasonable and thought out as they would like them to be. And that's pretty fucking great if you ask me. All that said though, the biggest draw to this game is definitely the story and atmosphere. And by that I mean that they make up for a lot of the game's flaws. Like, Susan's walking speed is awfully slow, the game is a bit too edgy mech-emo sometimes, and it also runs a bit spotty as well. Overall, the game can just be a bit rough at times, though I'm going to assume that it's just a byproduct of the engine that it's made in. I mean, if Adventure Game Studio is anywhere near as simple and clunky as RPG Maker, which it is, then I don't think it could have really been helped all that much. And even then, the whole reason I started listing off flaws like that was because I was trying to prove the point that the game's story and atmosphere make up for it. For instance, Susan's walking speed isn't really all that bad when you have a great fucking soundtrack blasting through your ear holes while walking. The edgy emo shit is balanced out nicely by having some legitimately well-written sad stuff going on. And the performance, well, okay, that just kinda sucks, but as I said, that's probably the engine's fault. Either way, it's just a pretty great fucking story to experience, as it really draws you in with its visuals, music, and narrative. It's actually quite special to see storytelling done this well in a video game, and it's only made by just a handful of people. And also, the game is just quite special to me personally. I mean, as someone who actually has suffered from chronic depression to varying degrees throughout my life, this game does hit pretty close to home sometimes. Now, don't worry your little nipples, I'm not gonna go on some stupid rant throwing trigger warnings around like some kind of asshole, as, in my opinion, putting your hands over your ears is completely contradictive to not becoming a complete antisocial fuck-up. No, in fact, I'm going to do the opposite. If you suffer or have suffered from depression like I did, play this fucking game. It might make you feel kinda shitty at times, it might even make you feel bad after playing. Hell, it might even do that if you're a human being of the normal and functional variety. But I can wholeheartedly say that because of the very strong emotional connection I felt while playing, it ended up meaning a lot more to me than most other games can ever hope to accomplish. It brought this game from being just some edgy emo goth tart indie game to something very, very special in my eyes. Granted, when I first played the game 2 years ago, I was right in the middle of all kinds of bullshit, and it definitely made less of an impact now that I'm not feeling like shit all the fucking time, but I'd still say that it's totally worth experiencing. It's just a pretty darn good horror game and quite the accomplishment overall. And also, David fucking Firth is in it as well.
What's the matter, sleepyhead? Had a bad dream? Do you want me to give you a cuddle and a kiss? Take the nightmares away? What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?